I can pull a better podcast out of my head. Hey, kids, welcome to the Tempest Universe.
China.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
It's China to me, China.
Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside.
China.
This is the Tempest Universe, man. Hold on to your ass. You're in for a hell of a ride.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Tempest Universe. We are live right now on YouTube, and eventually tomorrow you'll have this episode on the podcast itself, wherever you listen to it. But today we're lucky. Today we've kind of struck ufology gold, contemporary gold, right? Not the old stuff, because we know we get tired of those legacy incidents. And by the way, if you're looking on YouTube, I'm wearing a mask. Got the old COVID, the Wuhan flu has struck me, and it's been a crazy 24 hours. But today we got David Altman and David Mason. They joined us from the award-winning documentary, A Tear in the Sky. Not a tear. It's a tear. Tears of rains. The documentary takes you on an unprecedented journey into the UFO UAP phenomena. And let me tell you, I just watched it less than 24 hours ago. And I feel like I'm here on the podcast, on the video cast with superstars. Welcome, Davids.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess we should clear that up first. You're more than welcome to call me David, maybe him Dave, or vice versa. But either way, thanks for having us.
Which Dave are you talking about?
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. How about DM and DA? That kind of works a little better.
Or Altman and Mason.
Altman and Mason. I like that.
Yeah.
So listen, I'm glad you guys made it, and I'm glad to the Vocab Communications and Chrissy for getting us in touch. Like I said yesterday, I pulled up this documentary, and it was shock and awe for me, specifically because I am one of those folks that gets tired of legacy incidents. Like, stop talking about Roswell. We've got Tic Tacs. I mean, you can't go wrong with that. I would love to talk about flying candy. It's fantastic, especially when it's what 40, 70 foot in length. So why not talk about Tic Tacs? But you guys played an important role in this specific documentary because it's not just about going out and looking for UFOs. You guys played a scientific role in this. And I'm going to start with David Mason. Your technology, your tinkering is phenomenal. How did you get into applying your tech savvy into UFOs?
Well, when I was a kid, I was reading a lot of the UFO books that included compasses going crazy and also described lights on these UFOs. And I always thought that there was some sort of information or other ways that we could try to learn more about the phenomenon based on what was observed and reported. And so I, as a kid, was learning electronics at a very young age. When I was 5 years old, my parents gave me a soldering iron, and luckily I didn't burn the house down. But I started learning electronics at a very young age, and I built a UFO detector when I was 13 that was based on a compass and a phototransistor and LED. And the photodiode binoculars that you see in the movie, I built those back in 1981 when I was 17. And because I believed that there was some content within these UFOs in the light that it was being modulated or described as modulated, and then hopefully to try to communicate with them. But it's a long story, for how I got further into this, where I started spending tons and tons of capital on state-of-the-art equipment.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And listen, you're true to form because look at behind you. You've got nothing but technology there.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just show you this oscilloscope. So this is I don't know if you can see it on the screen.
Oh, it looks great.
This is a Tektronix MDO 4104C-6.
Mm-hmm.
Current product, it's one of my scopes. $33,000 for this oscilloscope.
Oh, geez.
So it's I don't play with toys. I use real equipment.
Yeah,
And-
especially those things back there, which were in many of the shots in the documentary took center stage.
Yes.
Yeah, and quite interesting concept you got there. So tell us a little bit about those.
Okay, so behind me you'll see the triple spectrum light wave transmitter, and what this transmitter does is it splits off infrared and visible spectrum, which is the center device, and then the one on the to the right is ultraviolet. And what they're doing is broadcasting frequency modulation, amplitude modulation in spread spectrum. And what I can put on those transmitters, I can put music, I can put recorded sounds. I can interface the photodial binoculars that were shown in the movie, where you can see the volume control, the gain controls.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a defocused laser in this. It's a low power laser, but it's defocused because you don't want to be pointing these at aircraft or pilots.
Right.
And also it's modulated by what's received in the binoculars. So if we have a light source that's modulating, that's got some kind of content, sound, I can beam it back to them in the form of that defocused laser. And so if we receive something coming from a spaceship and it's probably going to be over our heads as far as whatever that message might be.
Right.
At least we can beam it back at them and say we're listening and hope for the best, that we're trying to communicate.
Yeah, that type of two-way communication, kind of like Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
And I can also connect these to the console behind me, that blue box.
Mm-hmm.
That controls the triple spectrum light wave transmitter. I control modulation and depth, so that's the electronics that runs the light wave transmitter. But I can plug these into it. There's a night vision goggles that does the same thing, but it's different technology and how it accomplishes it. And that was one of the devices that I thought really was very unique, because it's Gen 3 night vision. You look through it and you can hear the sounds that are detected within that night vision, the light
Mm-hmm.
that's modulated. And then the third invention, which we didn't show, is a FLIR thermal camera that I completely re-engineered so that what it will do is take cold temperatures or even warm temperatures or body heat, that if that is fluctuating, we can hear that and we can record that as well. And for example, I pointed that FLIR camera at a bird flock, and I could hear the wings flapping due to the changes of heat around those birds. So it's just another tool to be added to this research so we can detect these objects. And the reason for the thermal camera that does this is I recorded anomalous objects that seem to be fluctuating in energy in long wave infrared. And I think there's a likelihood that there's content within that infrared.
Yeah, it is amazing, because you usually don't see folks who go out and boots on the ground that are trying to investigate UFOs that have all this tech, and to see it in the film, it's amazing.
Yeah, it is surprising that a lot of the films they'll use low quality night vision. I mean, like I'll show a thermal camera. I mean, this thermal camera with lens set was over $50,000.
Wow!
And we had 8 FLIR cameras running for 5 days at the site that we filmed at for the movie. So I was really confident that we were going to record some anomalous objects given the count of cameras that were running.
Yeah, no kidding. And then it was just, you guys were not just sitting all hugged up together in one spot. Right. You guys spread out, and you were trying to really have some evidence to back up other evidence to make sure that this is triangulated and a real deal.
We did that, and we also rotated shifts so people could get some sleep. I was getting between two hours, maybe 3 hours of sleep a night. I mean, it was pretty rough toward the end.
Oh yeah, like I couldn't imagine even sleeping at all, to be honest. So we got David Altman here. So he's over there hanging out in the chat right now with the folks that are logged in, talking away, and then he's got a little bit of a vape going on, it looks like.
That's pretty much where I spend 80% of my life, in UFO chats on YouTube.
Yeah. All right. Well, here, let's talk about you for a second, because I feel that we're almost kindred. So you know, I have this connection with David Mason with the technology because I think it's important in this topic, right? But you have this thing about we need to get away from these legacy incidents. Stop talking about Roswell all the time. Stuff's going on now.
Yes and no. I mean, you know, especially considering that I work in TV on a lot of these shows, we don't want to really say that because I might not eat for a while.
No one else is going to look at this, just you and me right now.
I know. But you also have to take the fact that Catalina Island itself is a legacy in a way.
It is, but a lot of their conspiracy is kind of current, right? Well, you throw in the stuff with the Nimitz and the military.
I mean, the conspiracy started way back in World War II when Catalina Island was used to train the OSS. So, you know, it's been happening for a long time. And honestly, if it wasn't for that legacy of the Nimitz encounter, I personally probably, if I didn't know the guys, would be a little hesitant about it. Because, you know, they encountered this object out there, but if you go and you look and you do the research, you'll see that they've been encountering, you know, phenomenon out there for 70 years, you know?
Yeah. So, I absolutely agree about that. Totally. Yeah. My thing is that a lot of times we get stuck in the 40s, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think a better way to put it would be this is an operation, an investigation that's never been done before, especially at this scale. So, you know, we could have taken this expedition to a case that had, you know, the attachment of legacy to it. But we wanted something more current. And the whole point of the expedition being put together by Kevin Day was to go and investigate what he encountered during the Nimitz encounter.
Right. And Kevin Day from the USS Princeton.
Correct.
Right. And we'll get to him in a second because his story is it's phenomenal. Sad in a lot of ways, right? The impact that he had from this. Yeah. But same question goes to you that I gave David Mason, and that is, how did you get into the investigation of these things, the UFO phenomenon in general?
So, like most people, very young age, my parents got divorced when I was around 7 or 8, and my mom and I went to go live with my grandmother, and my grandmother at the time was a librarian at the public library. So after school, my mom would be working, and she'd drop me off at the library, and my grandmother would sit me down in front of the monsters section, you know, with all that good stuff. And right next to that section was Bigfoot, UFOs, and the paranormal. So I just kind of grew up with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Sci-fi
that makes.
Kid.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and that's one of the things that I feel, right? So I kind of give folks in a certain age, you know, the children of Roddenberry, the children of Lucas, the children of Spielberg. They all have that question, right?
Yeah, in search of. That's the big one.
Exactly. You know, and so to me, there is something that television and TV in us, you know, versus those that were around the time of Roswell, that's given us that question: is there more? Is there something else out there? You know, and I feel like a lot of people in that age range that had those favorites, that they're more willing to go out of their way to investigate this. And I see that. And you guys are doing a great work out there. You know, at any time, now there was a great discoveries during the film. We're not going to give it all out because, you know, people got to watch it. It's a great film. But at any time you think you weren't going to catch anything, and I'll leave it up to you who answers first.
I only had a concern if we had completely overcast skies, if it was raining, and I figured we weren't going to get much as far as video. But maybe something on a radiation analyzer. But that was the only real concern. But I was very confident, given the amount of equipment that was brought, we were going to record something. And I brought, just to put it in perspective, all that equipment that you see on the rooftops, both on the 3 rooftops.
Everything, pretty much.
Everything was mine. I shipped it from my loading dock from my company. It took me a whole day to inventory it just for evaluation purposes. Mm-hmm. And there was one device on the rooftop where the main site was, and that was called the UFO DAP, and that's owned by Carolyn Corey. So she purchased that for this expedition. And everything else you see is my equipment.
Yeah, Carolyn Corey, the director of the film, Actually saw one of her other films too. Superhuman, was it Superhuman, Superpowers?
My best friend is in that movie.
Yeah. Oh, really? Who's your best friend?
Corey Feldman.
Oh, that's right. Corey was in there. Yeah, that was pretty cool. What he said into the recorder. A little throwback to.
It was a total synchronicity that him and I are such good friends, and we both ended up in her movies. It just happened that way. We didn't plan it, or it just happened. Weird stuff.
Yeah, another cool guy from back in the day, right? You know, child star, great guy. So for you, same question. Did you at any point you think, gosh, what the heck's going on here? Are we really even going to catch anything?
You know, a lot of people asked the question, did we do CE5? You know, did we have intention?
Yes.
And I can't speak for anybody else, but my ass was up there praying to whoever would hear me, you know, to hopefully catch something. But a lot of people don't know, who've watched the movie, is that I saw stuff on the first night.
Oh, did you?
We weren't able to record on Catalina until the second or third night because we couldn't figure out that, or we didn't know that we could record the night vision with our iPhones.
Mm-hmm.
So I saw stuff with my naked eye. I saw stuff through the night vision. Every night I was there. I mean, I don't know what it was. I know what it wasn't. I'm not saying I saw, UFOs every night, but I saw things that I don't know what they were.
All right, so listen, you opened the door.
But I did, but I'm sorry, but let me finish that thought.
Yeah.
So I guess it's kind of an intention, but unintentional intention. You know, I'm sure I'm not the only one who was out there going, please God, yeah.
Yeah, let there be something. I do have a question here from the chat. Did Mr. Ultman have any UFO experiences prior to filming the documentary?
Oh, this is a tricky one. So I'm not sure. I think I did. Something that happened probably 20 years ago, and I've actually been looking for the girl I dated at the time to ask her if it really happened. It wasn't like an abduction or anything, but I saw something in the sky, and to this day, I can't remember if it actually happened or if it was like a dream. You know what I mean? So possibly, I'm not sure.
It's possible. David Mason, the same question for you.
I would say the biggest, I've had a few visible sightings, but the biggest and most shocking one was in year 2007 or 2005. I brought from my company a test lab FLIR thermal camera. It was a $70,000 camera that I brought home with the intent to use it in astrophotography. And I found it didn't quite work with telescopes. And I thought, well, it'll be fun to point this in the sky and record a commercial jet flying overhead. But I didn't get a commercial jet. I got two very large objects one was boomerang shaped, one was V-shaped. I looked straight up. I didn't see a thing. And I tracked it with a thermal camera, recorded it, or recorded the objects. And after I reviewed the video, I found that the objects, according to the camera's calibrated temperature span, the objects measured minus 30 Fahrenheit. And they were very large. They would have been, if you were to hold your hand out at arm's length and then the width of your hand, that's how big they would have been. And I didn't see a thing. And so that's what got me started in doing thermography in this research. And it just kept going from there.
And that's minus 30 from the ambient temperature around the object.
Yeah, the object itself registered that. So if you take a long wave infrared thermal camera and point it to the sky, and if you have a clear sky and low humidity, it'll range down to a very cold temperature, even though your ambient temperature could be plus 70 Fahrenheit, but you could have something in the background sky of minus 50, minus 60, because of the emissivity of air is low and space is near absolute zero, so the nominal value will be this cold temperature. And within that cold temperature was the two objects. But I've also recorded objects down to minus 80 Fahrenheit.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, and the problems are that if these objects were flat black and had a high emissivity value, then that would mean that they're at very high altitudes to get those cold temperatures. Then the problems become then those objects have to be very large in scale, since we know the camera's field of view if you use the trigonometry. So it's really a mystery. And if they're shiny metallic, then they're just going to be reflecting the temperature of the Earth's crust. So in thermography, we take into account emissivity and reflectivity of objects to calculate temperatures, because there's variables that can affect those temperatures. And if you apply it in both extremes, it doesn't answer the question. It just makes it a deeper mystery.
Yeah, it's more complicated, right?
Right.
I have a question here for you that came from sightings on 18 wheels. Do you have equipment to detect the different spectrums of megahertz frequencies?
Oh yeah, RF spectrum analyzers. I don't have one right in front of me here. I've got one at work that ranges coaxially to 50 gigahertz. So it goes from 9 kilohertz to 50 gigahertz. Portable spectrum analyzer, and that's a really expensive. When new, it was over 50 grand for that. And then I can do harmonic mixers that you add to the first LO oscillator that allows it to go up to 110 gigahertz. So I can cover a pretty broad range in RF technology.
Yeah, that is just amazing. We kind of see some of that range of technology in the documentary. So you guys really want to go in there and check it out. So for both of you guys, we'll start with David Altman. I had a friend at one time who was writing a paper on the digital acuity of the eyesight of pigeons. But do either of you believe, and we'll start with David Altman, that a lot of things that we see and don't see have to do with our limited range of being able to see in the spectrum?
Oh, without a doubt. Like I was saying earlier, when I was talking about my first sightings in the movie, when you see me freak out when I see that one orb, I could only see it with the night vision. I couldn't see it with the naked eye. That's how I knew. Like if I would have saw a pulsating light without night vision, I could be like, oh yeah, maybe that's something else. But when it's not there, and then you put the night vision and you look and it's there, But Mason's the guy to answer those kind of questions. I'm not a scientist; he is.
Yeah, no, it's true. But you are from, as an experiencer, and you have experience. You investigate, so you have some insight.
Right, but Mason's the guy that builds the stuff. So
yeah, let's go to technology, because I know you had a lot of equipment in the film that looked at the different ranges of the visible light. So, what do you think happens with that?
What happens is that there are other spectrums. So we typically see between about 350 nanometers to about 800 nanometers, give or take 50. It depends on where you read the information. And that's the wavelength representing infrared to red and ultraviolet and so on. And then night vision goggles that David Altman was using, that we were using, they will range down further into infrared to about 1,000 to 1,100 nanometers. The thermal cameras that I was ranging were going from about 13,000 to 14,000 nanometer wavelengths. So much longer wavelengths than anything we can see. They're too far in the infrared, and it's called long wave infrared. And so there's different kinds of infrared. I mean, you've got IR, which is like your home security systems that can see in the IR and the night vision, and then you got short wave IR, which is called SWIR. Then you've got medium wave IR, and then we've got long wave IR, and that's where we were doing these images. So there's lots of different spectrums that are outside of our visible spectrum.
Okay. Yeah, and that's it's one of those things that I find strange, right? And especially like David Ultman was saying, where he's got two different things aimed at the same area, and one has an anomaly and the other one has nothing. It's pretty strange. I had a question for you guys here, and there's actually one in the chat. Now, the film concluded, was it last year? Last summer, almost a year ago. Right. Since the film has finished, have you guys participated in any other investigation?
There's some I can't really talk about at this point, but yeah, I can answer that question. But I mean, Yes, but I can't answer as to what.
Right. David, over to you.
Nothing major. We were under contract, not to do anything that was going to be televised. But personally, I was just saying in the chat that after I got back from shooting, I had 2 sightings that I don't know what they were. So when I got home, I saw a couple of things. Not that was an investigation, but it definitely made me look up a hell of a lot more.
Yeah. And that really is what it takes, right? You got to look up. And take some time to investigate yourself. Because as I can tell you, the sightings on 18 Wheels, that's what he does. And he has a lot of sightings. Andre Ortiz, also known as Dre, he has a couple questions here. One question is, what was the hardest part of making the film?
Oh, I can answer that for me. That would be carrying all of the gear and camera equipment up 14 flights of steps twice a day on 2 different locations with nobody. If it wasn't for Chrissy, I probably wouldn't have made it because she took a lot of the work off me one night. While she was there for the short time. It was on Catalina. It was me, Michael Hall, and Grant Smith, who was the camera guy. And Michael, whose health isn't the best, wasn't able to carry anything at the time. So it was literally 2 of us carrying everything for the 5 days, except minus the time that Chrissy was there. That was the worst part.
And David Mason, I know you had a ton of equipment.
Yeah, and I was the one setting it up. Kevin Day helped me set up some of the tripods, and I had to do set up the thermal cameras, get them calibrated, get everything time stamped and synchronized, make sure everything was operational. I was really happy that nothing arrived damaged or non-functional as what would normally happen under a long haul of equipment, because this equipment was trucked in a large cargo van about 1,300 miles from my business location to the Laguna Beach location, and it took a whole day just to get it all set up and calibrated and ready to roll. And so that was the stressful part.
Yeah, another question for you, specifically to equipment. Dre is asking what tracking equipment you use that is often mixed up with military tracking equipment. But you create a lot of this stuff yourself.
Oh, yeah. No, there's the only thing that we had that was military equipment was the PBS-7D and the PBS-5C night vision goggles. They are they use, and that's kind of the highest quality you can get for night vision. And so that was military off the shelf. And the pair of binoculars, I don't know if you could see them behind me, those large green binoculars. That was actually used by the Russian military in reconnaissance, and they were special. Only 12 of those were imported to the U.S. Very unique. They're very wide angle. But everything else is not, what you see, the light wave transmitter, I built that from scratch. The console, all the electronics, everything I built is built from scratch from my own unique circuit designs and engineering of those circuits. So it's something you have to do if you want to try to do something different. And that's what I encourage people to do, is try to be creative with your electronics or your instrumentation and try something different, because you'll be surprised at the results you'll get doing something differently.
Yeah. And like I said earlier on, the take on the documentary to bring all this equipment and all these scientists, all these people that have so many different levels of experience all together into, getting this documentary together, it's fantastic, right? A question that I have for you guys is that, so your film ended back last summer, almost a year ago. And then recently we had this whole hoopla about a subcommittee public hearing. Do you feel that it's kind of timely, right? You guys put together this scientific research. You go out there, you're out there, 5 nights altogether? And then all of a sudden, the government comes out, and all this started, of course, several years ago with those 3 famous videos, of course, relevant to the Tic Tac. But how do you feel about what transpired if you watched it with the subcommittee hearing?
I have to say I was only impressed from the standpoint that they actually opened the dialogue, but everything else was looking at really limited data and and data that was explainable, and they ignored everything else. They were very selective. It was very political, a lot of obfuscation and premise, and if you want to throw what was really discussed there. So from an enthusiast standpoint, it was a huge disappointment, and it was what was expected. Because of the questions that were asked, they really didn't know the answers, and these were very famous cases that required further vetting and further analysis. And so it was typical politics in action, and a big disappointment.
David Ultman, a lot of people in ufology who are out there doing their thing, promoting books and so forth and what have you, a lot of them seem really excited that this even happened. What's your take on it?
Yeah, I mean, I never go into these things expecting anything, hope for the best, expect the worst. I've said it a few times. Probably the biggest thing for me was the Wilson documents being mentioned, and the nuclear stuff. I mean, the video. You have to think, like, we're civilians, and we went out there, and you saw what we caught, and you're telling me that the government doesn't have better footage than we caught?
Yeah, you guys had 5 days. I mean, really?
Yeah, they've had 70 years plus, and we went out for 5 days, and
aircraft cameras and things that there's all kinds of stuff.
Right.
And
go ahead,
I was just going to say, I got approached to 2 commercial airline pilots who showed me photos that they had taken, and they just blew my mind. They can't come out and talk. They have jobs, and there's just a treasure trove of photos and videos that have been taken by commercial pilots who are not coming forward because the fear of losing their job, being pulled off the job. Yeah.
Now, other folks that were part of this was William Shatner. Of course, we saw him a few times in the documentary. Michio Kaku, it was good to see him. And Travis Taylor, the rocket scientist from the Skinwalker Ranch series. Travis Taylor seemed to have kind of geeked out a little bit when he saw your equipment.
Yeah, he was impressed. He got to look through and see some of these things demonstrated. So I don't think he was expecting that. And then he had shortly there, he had invited me to go to Skinwalker. I mean, it's right after we filmed the set. And I said, well, I've signed an NDA. My inventions are in the NDA. I don't know whether I should, but I'll take you up on the offer, and I'll think about it, is what it did. So because of that, I didn't actually go to his invitation at that time.
But imagine that. Imagine you out there with the rest of the Skinwalker crew.
Right.
They've got some crazy stuff too, right? Their videos are phenomenal. Now, the part that really got me in the whole documentary was Kevin Day. The impact of the Tic Tac incident, which until I saw this, I had no idea. So what was it with working? Because he really worked with you guys through this whole documentary. What was it working with him, knowing that he was there when that USS Nimitz and Princeton incident happened?
Well, it was a real pleasure to finally meet him. Now, it was Kevin Day who started the team, and he was the guy that put me on his team, and just putting people on that he felt were going to be offering the greatest contribution to his effort.
He was the founder.
Yeah, he started it, and so it was very, it was even overwhelming to meet the guy. It was very exciting to finally meet with him and work with him, and he was super excited to meet me and everybody else. That he saw that we were out there to vindicate him on the phenomenon, that we knew we were going to capture something to show that he wasn't crazy, that he saw these things on the radar and the pilots intercepted and saw these things.
Yeah. What about you, David Altman? What was your experience with Kevin Day? And
I actually already knew Kevin. I met Kevin. I went to my first UFO conference, which was Loughlin. I went out there with David O'Leary, who is the writer and creator of the show Project Blue Book.
Mm-hmm.
Him and I had gone out there, and it was. I think it was everybody but the pilots, pretty much. This was at the beginning when all the guys from the Nimitz encounter. I'm saying, most of the guys, as in the ones that have, been out in the media now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you talk to them, and you just gotta know, and you've got a feeling something happened to this guy.
Right.
The emotions that he shows. I've worked with Kevin Day on a lot of TV shows, and one of the phone calls I get from producers after they're done shooting is, he had the entire crew crying.
Really?
Because he starts talking about this, and the guy just bursts into tears and gets very emotional, and it's very emotional to watch him. He's very honest.
Yeah. So when you guys went into this whole documentary and you put the crew together, was there any thought that maybe this Tic Tac or UAP, UFO could have been something planted by the U.S. military?
Well, I mean, that goes back to what we were discussing before about all the research I had to do on the area beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
I had befriended the editor of the Catalina Island newspaper, and he actually wrote a book, which I have right here, which is, can you see it with the blue screen? Mysterious Catalina. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Jim Watson is his name. He sent me a couple of front page articles from the newspaper from the 40s. And one of them was two airmen who spot flying discs on the beach in 1947, July 7th, which is the same week as Roswell, the same week as Maury Island. I mean, not the same week, same time frame. All the way up until Roswell. I have articles from Colorado, from Washington, Kenneth Arnold, all the way up to Roswell. So, I mean, it just makes you think, like, whatever the airmen saw, whatever Kenneth Arnold saw, and whatever crashed in Roswell had to be the same thing. I mean, what could the odds be that it was something different for every state?
Right.
Then you also have the Battle of L.A., 1942. That object, when it headed south and it left L.A., it went out to Catalina Island and went out to the Pacific. So there's been so much stuff going on out there and so many reports. If it wasn't for the fact that I know Kevin Day and that I've done the research on the area, I would probably think this is probably something the military has.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, you could think, did they know about it, and are they using the phenomena and those things to cover up whatever they're doing? It's like
right.
I
So that brings me to a question that you brought up earlier, which is the idea is consciousness, right? Because a lot of folks believe that you can almost, through consciousness, bring them to you, make that communication in order to make that connection and have them appear. Do you think that happened? Do you think that all you guys there waiting, searching, kind of caused the phenomenon to occur?
Anything's possible. That's all I can say, But there's just so much history with that area. Guadalupe, San Clemente. A lot of people think that there's an underwater base out there.
Yes.
I mean, honestly, I think that whatever this thing is, it lives out there. In my own personal opinion, that whatever I saw and whatever's going on out there, there's a transcript you can get. Dr. Kit Green, he had a session with the remote viewer, and she was allegedly like the top psychic in the U.S. And he had her do some remote viewing and using her psychic abilities, whatever she does. And she comes back and she gives a report. She calls Kit Green, and she recorded the whole thing. And I've had the pleasure of hearing this recording. You can't find it on YouTube. You can only get it from like person to person. Somebody sends it to you. But you can get a transcript from Joe Mergia. You can just ask him for it. He'll give it to you. But in the report, she says, like, whatever I'm looking at, it's out by Catalina Island. It's underwater, and it says it's protecting a fault line.
Okay.
So
now that's interesting.
Take what you want from that. It's just another Catalina Island connection.
Interesting. David Mason, the same to you. And even from a technology standpoint, could all the technology that was out there kind of brought them to the table?
It's a possibility. I was running that light wave transmitter the entire time. I was transmitting on one transmitter was my guitar music, another one was Carolyn's composition. So we were playing music, and I'll get into the reasons why. And then also on another one, I was doing a light wave transceiver, receive all light that's coming in from outer space, and then transmit it right back out, just doing the relay. And then off and on, I would transmit recorded whales and dolphins, and these were whales and dolphin recordings that were given to me by someone who's an expert who doesn't want to be named. And because I wanted to have whales and dolphins that were out playing and happy, and not something in some holding tank that's depressed, you know. So,
right.
So I broadcast that off and on, and I don't know whether or not that actually brought any kind of response, but we were at least broadcasting in spread spectrum, AM and FM modulation, and covering a broad spectrum. We may have provoked a response, because this thing, it'll put a peak power of 600 watts of LED power. So that's a lot of power.
Yeah.
And so it who knows whether or not we actually triggered anything. But I want to hit upon your earlier question, and that was the phenomenon itself, whether it was our technology. I was just in a podcast last night with David Sarita, and if anybody knows who he is, he's a famous physicist, and he was discussing with me about how fast those objects dropped from 80,000 feet to their elevation of 50 feet in 0.78 seconds, and he said that calculates to 66,000 miles per hour. Well, we have meteorites that disintegrate in the atmosphere, iron-nickel meteorites, that are going half that speed.
Oh, really?
So we can't even propel metals. And then the SR-71 Blackbird, which was this titanium aircraft, much of its speed was limited by the fact that the faster they went, it would get so hot, the skin would get up to about 500 degrees Fahrenheit. I mean, where there were places that it was going to become a time bomb if they went any faster. And I believe that they said it was Mach 3, but officially, but I think it did Mach 5 is what I was hearing on reports. Or I've even heard some of even faster.
Yeah, that's amazing.
But that's not anywhere close to the speeds that were recorded on radar. And then at one point, when the pilots said that the object disappeared in front of them, and then it appeared at a cap point, 60 miles distance in a second, David Sarita said that was 216,000 miles per hour. So
that is
we don't have
bananas.
We don't have any kind of structural technology to do that. Not here, in those kinds of forces. It would just disintegrate. It would collapse on itself. A person on any kind of vessel, if you had a entity, it would be vaporized and squished and liquefied by that kind of G-force. So it can't. I really don't believe it's our technology. And everybody likes to believe that kind of stuff because it's all anecdotal information on the internet. You can find websites on it, but where did that information come from? And the problem is, somebody puts a story out there or a website about technology, and then it gets copied and pasted on another website. And after it's been out there 3 or 4 times in different sites, and then it becomes indoctrinated.
The telephone game.
Yeah, it becomes
yeah, exactly.
It becomes factual over. Oh, well, if I find it here and here, it must be legit. And so many stories propagate like that. Just because somebody copies it and pastes it somewhere, and then somebody embellishes off that story and extends it. And so we do have extraordinary technology. I'm not buying the game that what happened in the 2004 incident was our technology. I mean, I've talked to the PhD physicists on this, and I haven't found one PhD physicist who says that they can explain that.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's something that when you first see it, especially if you're into this topic, you're like, dang, there it is.
Yeah.
But widely, for the most part, ignored by the general public. And so it seems like the hardest thing is, how do we get the general public to believe this? I mean, it could be your documentary, right? That kind of breaks that veil to get people more into it.
I think what would really change things, and it's really simple. If people spent more time doing sky watches, just go out in a recliner chair with binoculars in an evening. Don't play on the internet. There's better things than the internet.
Right.
And watch the sky. Once you experience and witness something, it'll change your mind. I had set up a thermal camera one time. I was visiting my mother, and I set it up on her driveway. And my niece came over and brought her boyfriend, and he was a young graduate student, physics, and he was basically debunking everything I was doing. And I was just going to have fun with this guy because I knew we were going to record something. And the way he responded when a triangular object appeared in the thermal camera, he was gasping for air. And then I started narrating it and say, notice its cold temperature as it moves. And he goes, you're talking about it matter of fact. And I recorded many of them, so I was used to it. But he was a believer. He got converted because of what he saw. That it was live.
Seeing is believing, right? Seeing is believing.
Right. And also we look at, I like to use this analogy. So when you look at dreams, everybody has a night dream. If I tell you I had a night dream and tell you what happened, you'll believe me because you have the same thing. Almost everybody can recall their night dreams, and often they're silly or funny or scary.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact is, you can't prove scientifically that you had a dream. You can't prove to me. I can't prove to you. I mean, there's no real proof that they exist other than the individual testimony. So, and we can hook up instruments and see biological activities to see that, okay, they must be dreaming because their muscles are twitching. That's an observation. That's not proof of its existence. So what it becomes accepted in science only because of the preponderance of the evidence, the preponderance of if everybody's experiencing this, it must be real, even though there's no scientific proof on an individual basis.
Right.
Now, to show you how biased science is and how flawed it is, what if only 10% of the world population could recall their dreams? What would happen with that 10% of the population? I'll tell you, they would be crackpots. They'd be the crazies afflicted with some sort of nocturnal mental disorder. And they'd have drugs to treat it, drugs that cause diarrhea, hair loss, and death, but take it because it's good for you.
Mm-hmm.
That is what would be the synopsis of it. So, and what this could be happening is people who are seeing things that may have a greater ability, or people who can have some cognitive capabilities that others don't have. And this is where science fails because it only works on the majority. And if that was happening, and this phenomenon, because we don't have the worldwide observations, then it's still considered woo or considered, you're crazy if you believe in this phenomenon. But if everybody was to witness it, it would then be indoctrined as factual within the scientific community.
Yeah, luckily the stigma is going away, right?
It is.
David Ultman, what you got?
I was just going to say, I think that has a lot to do with the hearings and why the government is only looking at cases that started in 2004. Because when you start looking at cases years ago, you're looking at some pretty wild stuff. Some pretty wild sightings and reports.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, and the thing is that during these hearings, they kept on saying that these were credible. Well, credible because it came from the military, but
exactly, and that's another thing. It's like they just disregard anybody else's.
Right.
It's kind of.
But they only exampled the things that were recently debunked. So it was just like they only showed you the stuff that wasn't really exciting, and that's where I thought it was more of a bait and switch, and then omit information that gave provenance to a story.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought the questions that were asked were I wasn't impressed. Overall, I wasn't impressed. I was only pleased to see that there were, in fact, hearings on the matter. And maybe the next level will get to a level that will impress people and have greater exposure. And I loved how they summed it and said, well, we're going to discuss this behind closed doors.
Private.
Right.
And private. So I'm sure
they've never done that before.
Yeah, never.
We would love to be a fly on the wall in that conversation to find out what's going on. But, obviously there's a cover-up if they have to be behind closed doors.
Yeah. It's all under the guise of national security, of course.
Yeah, and I think in some cases that's true. If they've got incidences that involve some black project materials, that I understand, and I comply with that, and we shouldn't know about stuff like that. But when it's a phenomenon that's extraordinary that they're holding back because they think it's going to frighten the public, I don't think it would. I mean, I think we're at the day now if they said, well, a spaceship landed and and we greeted with these aliens, we'd have half the people saying, well, that's a Hollywood recreation. It's not real. Other people will just go, well, whatever. That's pretty cool. I'm going back to watch TV.
Right, exactly. What's on my phone?
and the thing that's changed is that I believe that there was a great fear level during the Orson Welles famous broadcast or infamous War of the Worlds, where he was broadcasting a radio broadcast about Martians coming and destroying, and people jumped out of windows and did crazy things and shot at water towers. I think they had a fear of that happening, that the population would become unstable and would become disorderly. So I don't think we would react that way today.
We have another question here in the live chat from Dre again. Do you believe in other things other than UFOs like Bigfoot, Loch Ness, and so forth? The cryptids.
Well, for Bigfoot, I mean, you can go back long before Hollywood. The American Indians reported it. There's a lot of evidence to support it based on historical evidence. And of course, there's photos and videos that are often controversial. People that my cousin, he told me he's pretty sure he's heard it. He was a hunter and heard a sound that he said it wasn't human, it wasn't anything, and it was something very large. And that was not too far from where I live. And so there's a lot of testimony on it. Loch Ness monster. That we know that famous 1936 photograph with the thing out of the water. I from what I've read, it was a hoax. That it was actually that was a hoax photo.
A surgeon photo.
But there's other witnesses that keep coming forward saying, I saw something undulating coming out of the water, and we're not hearing that around other lakes. We're not hearing. I live by a bunch of lakes. I never hear anybody saying they're seeing a large monster. So I think when you have it just becomes the preponderance of the evidence. If people are saying they're seeing something there and not seeing it elsewhere, it must be there.
Yeah, I saw an article a couple of weeks ago that said that the Loch Ness was not a whale penis. So we can rule that one out. What about you, David Altman? What do you think about these cryptids? I know we're going off the path of tearing the sky, but
no, I love it. I'm actually in the middle of developing a new Bigfoot TV series right now, so I mean I'm into it. I personally don't think that Bigfoot is a relic hominid. I think that Bigfoot and even things like the Loch Ness monster have more of a paranormal aspect to them. There's so many reports of Bigfoot flashing into a ball of light, being shot at, not having any effect on it. I also know of a lot of Bigfoot accounts that have UFOs involved. I personally do not think that Bigfoot pilots a UFO. I don't think, like
Chewbacca. Kind of.
like the Wookiee.
The Wookiee, yeah.
Even the Loch Ness monster. I mean, Aleister Crowley had a house, right there on the edge of Loch Ness, and he was doing rituals, and a lot of weird stuff happens. I mean, Loch Ness has UFO reports, Men in Black reports. Nick Redfern writes a lot about that stuff.
Yes.
I don't think there's a surviving plesiosaur out there. I mean, it would have been found already. I don't think it's an eel. I don't know, man. I think these things have more of a paranormal aspect to them, or dimensional, or dimensional.
Dimensional, yeah. Now that's a good take on that. That's a pretty good take on the Bigfoot situation. Loch Ness, I don't know so much. I just think I like the whale penis explanation actually. Now I feel like I have somebody that I referred to as Deuce Bigelow, the Space Gigolo, also known as Robert Bigelow from Bigelow Aerospace. And good old Bob. My thing with Robert Bigelow is that he hoards information. Now you guys have done a lot of research. You've got a lot of data. Will you guys make that public once you're done going through it? Because I'm sure you guys aren't done yet, or are you?
No, we're not completely done. But we've pretty much found what we needed to show, at least like what was found and displayed in the movie. But there's still more data analysis in there. On FLIR, there's over 600 hours of video that has to be vetted, and so that's a real arduous undertaking. And you can You can do this where you're fast forwarding video and looking at it in real time, fast forward 2x or 4x. You can use software, and there's limitations between your visual acuity as well as the software, because you're going to flag things with your eyes that the software won't find, and then the software will find things your eyes don't find. So you really, you kind of want to use both of those technologies to vet thermal camera video or other videos to see if you've recorded anything anomalous.
We have a question here from Science on Wheels. During the 5 days of recording, did you guys ever feel anything or hear anything strange or unusual? Personally, I would assume that the question refers to.
Feel or strange? No, I didn't. The only thing I could say was I was just out on the rooftop at night, and I was panning around with night vision, and I saw something luminous go over a hillside, and it actually looked like it was maybe a couple 100 feet above the hillside, and it just went across and went over to the water, and it faded out. And when I watched it in night vision, I was thinking to myself, did I really see that? Because it didn't make sense. It wasn't a bug, being illuminated in the night vision. It was just something that was luminous. And I think a lot of people were seeing things that were, off camera that were unusual, but I never got a feeling of that something was coming or had any kind of sense of juju or something scary was going to happen or super exciting. I just knew that we were going to have something given how many cameras we had running at the time. And that was based on the fact that I've run FLIR cameras at home and recorded anomalous objects from home. So it's I was pretty confident that we were going to have stuff.
David Altman, anything give you the heebie-jeebies?
Only thing I really felt was extreme exhaustion. That's about it. I mean, it was July. I'm on a rooftop. We're up for hours on end. I probably was seeing things, maybe towards the end on the ferry home. But I mean, everything was cool for me. While I was on the island, pretty much in my spare time, all I did was ask locals where the giants were buried.
There you go. It's a beautiful place, right? Catalina Island looks amazing.
Yeah.
It really is. All right, last question for you guys. Just in general, you got the film. You made some amazing discoveries. It's on the film. So you guys are going to go watch it. If you're thinking about it, go watch it anyway. You can watch it on Amazon or at terrorinthesky.com. It's there. Where else can they see the film, by the way?
It's on Amazon. It's on Amazon, Vimeo, iTunes. We've been number 3 and number 4 on iTunes in the top 10 since it came out. It's doing very well. It's on Apple TV, but the best place is to just go to terrorinthesky.com, and everything's right there.
Yeah. So probably the question for you guys is, you've got all the data, you had a great cast, you had some special guest stars, people that really believe in this. Not only from William Shatner, Captain Kirk and acting, he made his little trip on Blue Origin's rocket, recently as well. So he's into this. He knows about all this stuff. He investigates it, because even in the film, he talked about some of the things that he was reading into. But there's always people who are going to say, how crazy is this? They just happen to show up with all this equipment and they got all these anomalies. Or they're going to question the validity of what you have. Have you had any of that since the film came out?
Yeah, I mean, one of the issues that people in ufology had was the movie was released under the categories of documentary and science fiction.
Oh boy.
So for me, I was happy about that, because the fact that it's going to reach such a wider audience. There's a lot of people that might not be looking for a documentary, and they're going through and they don't know about UFOs, and they're going through science fiction and they see it. Right. The only reason that it was there under science fiction is because that we have one of the biggest science fiction stars of all time in the movie.
Of course.
William Shatner is science fiction. And one other thing that you might not know is that Caroline named the movie A Terror in the Sky before we even started filming.
Oh, there you go.
So think about that for a minute after you've watched the movie.
Yeah, exactly. After you watch the movie, and it's weird. What a coincidence. What about you, David Mason? Anybody say, hey, that's not right?
No, nothing. No one's really questioned me on anything, not at this point. I expect that will happen. I mean, people are suspicious because there's a lot of faked videos on the internet. Especially after COVID came out, people were manufacturing these videos or videos of the prosaics, the birds, bugs, and aircraft and satellites that are very commonly misunderstood. And so no one's really said anything at this point. I mean, I know what I know based on the research I've done. And, I've had others look at this material. I just went over some with David Sarita, and he was just blown away by what was recorded. And so, yeah, it's going to happen. I mean, like I said, if a spaceship landed and aliens came out and greeted us and did all those things that were Hollywood even, most people wouldn't believe it or accept it. So it is what it is.
We could have presented a body, and there's people that just don't believe any. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, they won't believe at all.
People go ahead.
There's reason for that though, because people have been hoaxed before, because they have been faked videos, and so their suspicions are high. I understand it. So if somebody thinks that there's something suspicious, I'm not going to fault them on it if it's based on previous experiences in documentaries or stories that have come out. And so that kind of stuff happens. It's just unfortunate. That's what makes this whole phenomenon so difficult to work in, because you've got people who are self-promoting and taking stuff and running with it and putting a dialogue on it. And then you got people who are debunking, who are also self-promoting as debunkers, and they always get called out and they get their name called out. So you got two extremes, and they're really doing the same thing. It's unfortunate because then it contaminates the data, and we don't know what is all the, what's the truth and what isn't the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. And, skepticism is all about ufology, right? You got to be a little skeptical, but some people just take it over the top. It seems, sadly enough. Okay, one last question, and then we'll give it to you guys to have the last word for this episode. Out of all the equipment, what is your go-to equipment? Like, if you had to leave today to go back to Catalina, go back to some other UFO incident, which one would you take and leave behind the others?
I would take my 8 set of FLIR cameras, my expensive FLIR cameras. That would be what I would go to, because that's where I've had most of the results. But my second choice would be PVS 7D night vision goggles, because you'll see things in the night vision goggles that you won't see in the FLIR cameras. So you kind of need to run the two different cameras. And of course, my devices, my electronic devices, I would bring those. So those would be my primary.
You kidding me, Dave? You wouldn't go back out there unless you took everything.
Yeah, what people don't realize is I've actually got even more equipment than what was brought to the expedition, and so I own a lot more equipment, and it's kind of crazy what I've put my money into. But ever since I got hooked on the phenomenon when I recorded the first object back in 2005, I've never been able to get that out of my system, because I realized what I'd recorded and that it wasn't explainable.
Yeah, absolutely. David Altman, what's your favorite equipment to take out?
Night vision, man.
Night vision, okay.
And especially for people just starting out, you can find some night vision online that's not very expensive. You might have to save for a little while, but you can't go wrong.
Yeah, you have to be careful about night vision. I did a YouTube video comparing the different grades between Gen 1, Gen 2, and Gen 3. And there's solid state night vision, but the solid state night vision isn't as sensitive as the real stuff. And but the solid state will usually do video recording, so you got some trade-offs on that. So that at least if you're going to buy image intensifier night vision, go with at least a Gen 2 or Gen 3 for the performance. The Gen 1 is the stuff that's priced like $400 to $800. You're going to be disappointed.
There you go. A little insider tip from David Mason. So final word to you guys about the film, about the phenomena, whichever way you want to end this episode. I'll give David Mason, since you're on, we'll put you on there.
Okay, what was the question again? I missed it.
What's your final word related to the documentary, the film, and even the phenomena, if you want to tie that all together?
Well, I would hope that people can watch this documentary and enjoy it and understand that we really did record some anomalous objects that are interesting. and you can be the judge as to what was recorded, and also feel inspired to do your own research and not just be depending on others like myself or others, but buy your own equipment and do your own research in this phenomenon. I really want to inspire people to do that, because more eyes on the sky are going to expose more of the phenomenon, so that then it gets more credence and scientific research, so we can discover what this phenomenon is about.
Absolutely. David Altman?
Yeah, and to add on what Mason just said, you don't have to go to Catalina Island to do this. I mean, these things are everywhere.
Yeah.
Go outside and look up.
Yeah, I've recorded numerous objects from my own backyard, and that's where it started. But I found I could set up my cameras in different locations and record the same phenomenon, so it didn't really matter where. And I think it's everywhere. I don't think it's just, there may be some hot spots, but your own backyard, Manny, I'm sure if you set up and watched, you would be amazed.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Gentlemen, thank you for joining. Like I said earlier, I'm going through COVID right now, but last night I sat up and I watched this film. I loved every moment of it. It was fantastic. Just to see the enthusiasm and the commitment to applying a scientific research in this phenomena is fantastic. And, I hope you guys are going to be involved in more of these investigations. I hope there's a lot more scientists, a lot more techie people out there that get involved in this, because it's what we need. Mm-hmm. We need tech.
Yes.
We need tech out there to resolve this phenomena in some way or another. It might not be for a while, but for Pete's sake, we need some data. So I thank you guys. The link for the film to the website, to terrorinthesky.com, is in the description. And like I said, the folks on the podcast, you will hear this on Friday. And I thank you guys for joining. And I hope to see you again in the future.
Real quick, Manny.
Sure.
Everybody make sure to go and check out Dave Mason's YouTube channel. I'll let him tell you where it is, because he goes over a lot of his equipment and breaks down how his inventions work on that channel. It's very important.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. So I'm just on YouTube under my name, David Mason. My photo, I don't have my light beard. I'm wearing. I was flying a Cessna aircraft, so that's the photo icon. And there's videos of night vision astronomy, some of the inventions.
A guitar playing parrot.
Yeah, a parrot that plays a guitar.
There you go.
Kite, my kite parrot. I've got my own guitar videos where I'm playing guitar, and I've got an invention that's a handheld vector impedance oscilloscope that fits in the palm of the hand, and so I built everything from scratch on that. That's also, so it's just kind of a variety of interesting things that I've posted, and I'm sure people will enjoy some of it.
Oh, I would love to see the parrot. I'm going to go ahead and add that to the link to your YouTube channel in the description, so people will be able to find it. But outside of that, thank you guys for joining us. It was a pleasure to see the film stars here with me today, and much success to you guys. And keep looking to the skies.
All right,
feel better,
thank you, Manny.
Thank you.
Feel better, please.
Okay, bye.
Okay, bye.